later, everyone. My name is Nick Noel. I am one of your hosts on today's podcast, and usually I'm joined by one person, but today I'm joined by a veritable cavalcade of talent. Why don't we start with Mr. Dane? I always want to say Daniel, as though that's the full name, but I don't think it is.
It's not.
That's what it needs to be now.
Yeah.
It's just Dane, and it's frustrating because I will call, like, people will like correct me and be like, "You mean Daniel?" or "You mean Dave?" And it's like, no, it's Dane. It's why do you like?
That's
and
not
it's like
correct you on yourself.
Yeah. And so like I'll like put in a reservation or something at a restaurant or something where I have to give my name, and they'll, without question, they'll go Dave. And so I will always spell my name out, and I'll be like Dane, and regardless, they say Dave. It's just like, wow, this dumbass doesn't know how to spell Dave. And another one I've tried is I will introduce myself with going, Dane, like the dog. To which one person once responded, I don't know any dogs named Dave. And I'm like, what the?
That's really good.
Dave the dog.
Sure, Dave the dog.
Right up there with like Marmaduke.
And then
isn't Marmaduke a Dane anyway?
Yeah, Marmaduke is a great Dane.
You should just introduce yourself as a Great Dane going forward.
Yeah, just change your name to Marmaduke.
Then people will get it.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like that Great Dane? I'm just going to call you Dane for short.
Or Scooby-Doo.
Perfect. There it is.
Yep.
It's better than Scrappy-Doo, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and then below me, they are our social media coordinator and all-around fun-time person. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi. I don't have a great story about my name. It's just Erin. I get many people who ask me how to spell my name because there's a plethora of ways to spell it. My favorite that I came across, which was almost right, was Eron.
Ooh.
I'll let him have it.
Sure.
It's not right. But yeah, I don't have a lot of fun stories about my name. I'm just Erin.
And then finally, he is my usual co-host. He is also all-around video editor and media person extraordinaire. He used to have an ear infection, and hopefully it's going away.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. That ear's shot, but I'm in the middle of getting that repaired.
There we go.
I have a bad habit of when I meet or introduce myself to someone, I'm always caught off guard by the asking of my name. So I'll go, Ron. So a lot of times it's diffusing. No, my name is not Aaron. It's just Ron. Or it just becomes Rob. Half the people, a certain meteorologist I've worked with for 12 years calls me Rob every day, and I don't correct them. Because I tried and I've tried several times.
Now it's just an inside joke between the two of you that only you're in on.
Right. Yeah. We missed a great opportunity to introduce ourselves as characters. I would think in our party, I would be the blue mage. I could see Aaron being the white mage.
I could be. So when I would play my Final Fantasy Tactics, there would always be a rogue. I would always have a white mage because I got hurt a whole bunch. Or a scholar. For whatever reason, I just really always liked the scholar get up.
Boy, can we talk about, like, out of all the games, I think Tactics might be, like, it's top 3 for me, for gameplay. Oh,
we definitely can, and we have a segment for that, and we will get to it.
I'm just saying. It doesn't get the love it should.
And then finally, I'll just say, for those who don't know, this is a podcast. It's also a video recording. Weirdly, we just decided to do that one day. And it's about film adaptations of video games. So today we are, for some reason, going to be talking about Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
They came to unlock a mystery. I don't see how any living thing could survive out here. They came to uncover an ancient truth.
This is it. Dr. Ross has opened the door for us.
I say we go in.
What they did
What the hell is that?
was unleash a force unlike the universe has ever known.
Which is sort of a video game adaptation.
Yeah, whose fucking idea was that?
Yeah, I don't know. But we're going to be talking about it, so that'll be great. I don't have any fun stories about my name either, except that my real name is Nick Lepeshkin Noel, but I go by Nick Noel because Lepeshkin's a huge pain. And sometimes people would hear it, and I'd go, "Yeah, Nick Lepeshkin Noel," and they'd go, "So it's a Peshkin?" I was like, "No, there's a whole other name because they heard Noel." Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Doesn't matter.
It's a
really
decent
funny.
gag.
I
It's a
tell
good gag.
that to people, and I always get that reaction, and I still keep telling it to people. I don't know why. We're gonna cut this. Okay, so let's go.
Dane,
Cut the whole
make a note.
thing.
Sorry, Dane.
Sorry, Dane.
So this is great, and everything's going well, and I'm gonna move on. So we're gonna go into our feature presentation, where we talk about the movie we watched. It's pretty simple. I don't know why I'm making a big deal about it. It's fine. I don't know why I'm making a big deal about it. It's fine. Okay.
So I think we should have Erin kind of give a synopsis for those that, because I think our audience who may have watched this movie may not really understand the story. Maybe they do. I don't want to speak.
I don't think they got it. I don't think they understand it. You know.
They'll find out if any of we did either. So, Erin, can you give us a recap of what spirits?
I think that would be great, and also any names you feel like pronouncing would be great too. I don't know.
So specifically with that one, this movie was directed by Hironobu Sakaguchi. It was released in 2001 on July 2nd. 2001 was a great year for movies. This was not one of
just
them.
movies.
Yeah, not great year for other stuff.
Great year for everything else. Well, no, not for everything else. It was a year, ups and downs, a roller coaster, if you will. But spirits, Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
Pause for effect.
It's a movie.
Collecting my thoughts.
Sure.
If anybody wants to jump in at any point, that would be great. But the story, the plot is
I like how the very idea of describing the plot is tripping you up.
It's
like we are not even one word into the description.
So I'm somebody who has a lot of choice anxiety, and so this is me not knowing where to start.
Well, I'll take it. I'll start it. You correct me if I get this wrong. So Dr. Aki, we were introduced to
Dr. Aki Ross. Yeah.
Yes. Dr. Aki Ross is on an expedition into the heart of a dilapidated city, and we come to find out it's New York, and she's on a mission for like an artifact. And when she discovers the artifact, it's basically this plant that some in this new society argue whether or not it's got a spirit or has a way of spiritually combating this alien threat. And the world has been decimated by these alien invaders. And Dr. Aki and her research team believe it to be spirits of an alien world. And everyone kind of calls rubbish on that, thinks they're just aliens. And, you know, believing in the idea of Gaia or Earth having a soul or these aliens having a soul. I think where the movie gets muddled is because of the English script translated to a Japanese script translated back to English that was part of the design of this movie. So a lot of these...
What would cause problems with that?
A lot of these story threads are lost and kind of not developed as well. But that's the sense I get from the movie. And so basically it has a very video game concept of there are 8 spirits that have to be collected together that have the energy to kind of rebound off of this alien.
You need the crystal shards.
Exactly.
The Chaos Emeralds.
Triforce pieces. We
We
can keep going.
Good.
And there's also Steve Buscemi.
There's also Steve Buscemi. But he really doesn't get a lot of time to shine in this film. I didn't like his character at all. I mean, I think I made multiple notes about Neil, but kind of the gist is Dr. Aki, like at some point, so there are these things called phantoms that are like the alien invaders. And spoiler alert, I guess they're not actually, they're actual phantoms. They're ghosts of alien life forms from a planet, and essentially they're like pretty much invincible, except like when you shoot them with energy, then they kind of disperse. But they're
that's what
like,
that was?
yeah, I think that's what that was. But if you get touched by them, or they like go through you, or they can attach themselves to your spirit and suck out your spirit, which looks like a see-through blue man with a nervous system. And
traditional concept.
And essentially,
we all went to Sunday school.
And you can get infected by them if you just kind of like touch them, and it like corrupts your like DNA or something. And Dr. Aki has been corrupted, but is using the power of the other spirits to kind of cure her and like get of whatever is happening. And so every time she goes to sleep, she has these dreams of like the alien planet. And so there's a plot where she's trying to piece together what the dreams mean and who the invaders, the phantoms, really are. There's like a military coup subplot where they just really want to use this cannon named Zeus to destroy the crater that the phantoms landed on. And then there's like a love subplot because Alec Baldwin had like a fling with his character, and like toxic masculinity prevented him from like accepting her or something.
Well, that's one of the fundamental flaws in the story, because spoiler alert again, their child is the A spirit, and that was lost in the film translation. They cut that out of the script, but didn't change the animation, and they just kind of muddled dialogue around to dance around
that tentacle.
So wait, so did they like, when did the child come into play? When did the child come into play, and was it conceived when they kissed on the spaceship after everyone died?
They had a relationship, and she leaves to go to space.
Sure.
And he's like, hey, why did you stop calling me? And essentially what isn't shown in the movie, none of this is part of the film itself because they changed it. But the script was she got pregnant and left, and I don't know if that's part of her not wanting to deal with it or what. Mm-hmm. But their whole relationship and her not wanting to be with him is because she was pregnant and didn't know how to deal with it.
Okay, wait, hold on though. So are they postulating that she like lost the baby, had an abortion, and so this is like its spirit?
No,
or
just
are they
that
saying
spirit that is her fetus is the A spirit she needs to combat the alien
she's
threat.
Currently pregnant?
Mm-hmm.
So like they broke up like 2 weeks ago. Like,
well, I don't know. Either way, she doesn't look as pregnant as she probably should be. But I'm imagining she's supposed to be 3 or 4 months pregnant.
Okay.
But if you look in the animation, it's still in the movie. The tentacles go through her, and then the last one goes into her stomach and lights a blue, and the spirit form of the child comes out. That's what it's supposed to be. Yeah.
I thought that was I just thought that was the spirit that was already within her.
Yeah, that's the way that I thought it was, because I remember like
she's got a spirit within and a spirit within. But then they decided, let's just take that part out of the movie.
So then she has 2 spirits within, because the whole point of going to the crater was because the 8th spirit was on the crater. But then
I'm wondering if the dialogue.
But then it got destroyed.
The dialogue was changed just to get away from that part. I think they were just like, let's drop the pregnancy subplot. It doesn't make sense. But because of that, the movie makes even less sense.
All right, Americans aren't going to buy this whole pregnancy thing. So the ghost is an alien.
No Americans believe that people can get pregnant.
The alien ghost is corrupted by the soul of the
but
planet,
also like
and
what a
becomes
happy
a good ghost.
What a happy coincidence. They're like, oh, they're phantoms. They're like literal phantoms. They're ghosts. You accidentally got it right the first time, and you wasted all of this time. Did anybody ever sit back and be like, we call them phantoms? Is that just because they're see-through? I wonder if there's something to this.
Right. Well, I think
we sure are lucky that our human
very...
guns hurt the ghosts.
Do they,
I have a problem with that. We'll get to that.
Do they, though?
I think it's a very smart concept. I think Hironobu has a lot of the thematic elements of the games is in this movie. And the movie, despite me being kind of simplistic with it and being just upset it wasn't a fantasy, because I just wanted Final Fantasy III, the movie, when they announced they're making a movie. And we just kind of got this, but it's followed a thread line that he's always stuck to. You know, Final Fantasy came out and every story has been a different universe. And so, you know, Final Fantasy, the movie, is its own separate universe from the games as well. But, you know, it shares a lot of commonality with Final Fantasy VII. It's all about evil corporation and or military being more materialistic and killing the planet by using its own power to kill it. And, you know, that's kind of part of this whole story. And yeah, I don't like the guns shooting and hurting these things, but I like the idea of, again, it's faith versus science. It's them saying like, oh, phantoms aren't real. This can't be. It's like, no, these are ghosts from another planet. People, even though they see it, they still don't believe it. Maybe I'm giving the movie too much credit, but I think the whole concept of it is really interesting.
There's kind of these funny moments where you're like, you're supposed to be, because of the stance the movie takes, you're supposed to be on board with these scientists being essentially crackpots. Like from our perspective, from our cultural perspective, it's just like, oh yeah, like, no, if you believe that the earth has a spirit that needs to be protected, maybe you're not a scientist. Maybe that's just not your job.
Imagine tomorrow Dr. Fauci gets on and says, okay, this is a phantom threat and it's destroying the Gaia of the planet. Like, a lot of people would be like, huh? You know, and
but also,
James
Dr. Fauci was like, we can't fight the virus because it also has a soul and it's just as bad to kill the virus as it is humans.
Yeah. The movie's got a lot of problems. What I think is fascinating, and I'll wait till we discuss more of the actual story. I don't know if we're done with that, but so think about 2001 and these digital actors. I mean, if it wasn't for the technology pioneered with this film, the actual, like, no one knew what they were doing. And they created the system that we use today. We wouldn't have Gollum or Avatar. And you can argue whether or not that's a good or bad thing. I think it's very interesting, but motion capture of this kind had to be invented for this movie. And I think that
I was gonna say, from what I read, it's like this movie bombing and then Square shutting down their movie production studio, which was just, I guess, the motion capture stuff. Like, a lot of those people were hired into Weta and then made Gollum,
which is amazing.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't remember. So in the Fellowship of the Ring, was Gollum part of that, or was he in?
He was, but they hadn't done that technology. They didn't know if that motion capture was going to work yet. He's a CG element that you just see crawl up. It wasn't until Two Towers that they were like, all right, let's give this a shot.
Because I was going to say, because Fellowship of the Ring came out the same year as this movie.
Yeah, I think with this movie, once it was done and shuttled, like Dane said, a lot of those guys had nowhere to go. They had already kind of come down the pipe that this Hawaii studio was going to shut down, so they went to New Zealand and LA, and then, you know, so that kind of fell apart. But if this movie had succeeded, these cast of actors were going to go on and be in other films. Like, that was their approach, was that the woman playing Aki was a digital actor, and she would go on to be in different films as herself, if that makes sense, you know. And I wonder what the alternate reality of this movie working and that becoming a commonplace thing,
because that would have been interesting. That was like sort of a minor cultural blip, because didn't like Simone come out?
Simone was based on
around now, which is like an Al Pacino movie about a completely digital actress.
I think. He was like the agent.
Yeah.
I want to make it clear, just piggybacking on what Ron said. This movie was a technological watermark. It raised the bar. There's a lot of things that we learned. We, as in just entertainment, learned specifically through the making of this movie, and it's the weird, awkward, lanky, growing pains of the technology and stuff, and it deserves praise because of that. But I'm still gonna shit talk it.
No, please do. Yeah. See, the problem is it can't escape the level of cringe that's inherently part of the design. I mean, Neil's supposed to be the funny character, but it pales in comparison even to a Jar Jar Binks because there's no emotion on the face, and there's these dead pauses of, I think, for pause for effect. I don't know what it is, but it's.
But then also too, there was something. Yeah, Neil had one line that got like a sharp exhale through the nose from me, and that was when they were in the jail cell and all the lasers went out, and over the speaker it was like,
that's my favorite line too.
Yeah, I was gonna say emergency evacuate to the whatever deck, and then everyone is like, I think we need to evacuate to the deck.
Yeah,
I was like,
that was good. There were some smart things that might have worked if they'd done it better with him.
There was
a lot of it fell flat.
Yeah, there was a level of uncanny that really only had to do with the face because there wasn't that much emotion. But then also too, I think the animation suffered from like almost like a Frankenbass-esque thing, because so Frankenbass, like the top lip never moved, but just the bottom lip moved.
Oh, totally.
I kind of noticed that a little bit with these models where like the top lip had a really hard time moving, where the bottom lip was like, you got more teeth from the bottom jaw.
There was like nothing, the muscles here didn't move. So like nothing expressed here. Yeah. And that's the problem you get with three different capture. You have probably a 20 or 30-year-old dancer doing these motions on stage. You've got an artist trying to interpret these like facial movements that don't match the body at the time, and then you have Alec Baldwin talking, and all those come together, and
there's so many
Frankenstein. That
it's interesting for a movie that talks about the interconnectedness of all life, how disjointed the creation of this movie is. First, you have people who cannot speak to each other, trying to like translate scripts back and forth to different actors. You have actors who are only doing dialogue, are not involved in any way with the motion capture process. So you are having
all of these actors are alone in a room. They're
not even interacting with each other.
I literally made a note about that where I was like, there are some deliveries where it doesn't sound like they're talking to another person.
I'm sure they probably did it like a video game, where it would be my 100%. Guess, where they're just like, give it to us 800 different ways.
Yeah.
And it's sound, but I bet you, they looked at their process for doing cinematics. They're like, okay, this is how we do it with the games. Let's just do this. But and even Polar Express and Monster House, they all fell into those threads of not capturing what the face is really doing. No matter how good an artist you are, those nuances aren't getting picked up. They didn't nail that until after.
Have we ever talked about the insanity of Robert Zemeckis's kind of like Polar Express nonsense?
You have, actually.
Have we? Okay,
multiple
good.
times.
Then I won't do it again.
It's thanks to this movie. This is that same technology they invented, and Robert Zemeckis must have been going nuts in the theater watching this, because he spent a good 10 years of his career.
With the models, there was like this weird half like flat coloring, half like shading, and it reminded me, and I feel like I'm gonna date myself, and by date myself, I don't know if any of you guys will remember this because it's from my childhood, so sorry to call everybody old. It reminded me of the Scary Godmother film that would play on Cartoon Network a whole bunch during Halloween. And I don't know if anybody else remembers it, but that's what it reminds me of. Because that one was like weird, janky movement. and like the models moved the same, and like it was that weird half flat color, half like
it didn't jump out at me,
shady.
but I thought I read something that this was almost done pre-rendered in a way like the games were, like the backgrounds are painted.
Wholesale looked like, I did put like the textures I thought looked pretty good, especially
Dane,
for that time. But
when we were discussing this, Dane brought up a really good note. I mean, it does look like an HD cutscene from that time, except not being. There was like a Sega CD aspect to those.
Very
FMVs
Mass Effect. It was
very compressed.
Yeah, Mass Effect's a good comparison.
And just like, I mean, I don't have the animation language that you all do, but it's just like blobby and brown. Like the whole thing, just like, I know they're trying to show a desolate world, but like, there's nothing to distinguish as much
there's
of like the
20
surroundings.
shades of color in this movie.
Yeah, and it's just like it really lost like a bit of like grandeur and ability to like interact, like feel like it's a real environment, you know. So you have these
My two glaring notes that I took was I didn't like James Wood's face, because all he had
just
was
in general.
the same
I also like James Woods.
expression.
Fuck that guy. The character, the actors, all of it.
When this came out, I liked him as an actor before he really revealed what an awful person he is. But
I agree with Ron there.
Oh, do you mean a patriot? Is that what you're talking about?
James Woods was one of my favorites for the longest time, but it's one of those things where I have a very difficult time separating art from the artist. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I love Rosemary's Baby. I'm not going to watch it again.
Yeah.
My favorite Disney movie is the Hercules Disney movie.
Yeah, boy, he's wonderful in Hercules. It's tough to.
I can't.
No.
But
it's hard to watch that episode of the Simpsons, and that was one of my favorite ones.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. Family Guy. I mean, I don't know. Mileage will vary, but I loved a piece of candy. Ooh, a piece of candy. Ooh, a piece of candy. That's comedy gold to me. But no, James Woods' character in this had two expressions. His face never stopped doing this. Like just this kind of, I look more like Popeye. But he always had this grimace, and his acting choice. Like he had that mode, and I'm acting with my hands now. And that was it. That was the two speeds that he had.
For those who are listening in an audio-only format, Ron's face was like half confused, half constipation.
Yeah.
To just try and picture that. Yeah.
Yeah. His acting with his hands was like he was playing with an invisible marionette.
Yeah. I did make one note of like one really nice hand animation, and it was when they finally escaped from space. It was just Sid, Aki, and what the fuck is his Gray? Gray's character. I wrote down all the names just in case. And Aki was like comforting Gray and like put a hand on his shoulder. And then like floated off, and like the hand movement of like her pushing off was very nice. The only good hand movement that I made note of.
Well, that was my second note. Was her hair in space bugged the hell out of me. Like it would be like a helmet. She would look like Bart Simpson, and it would just be, "Gray, I love you," and it would not look the way it did.
Wasn't the animation of Ariel and Little Mermaid based off of, was it Sally Ride in space? So it's
CG.
visual,
they could have done it.
The history of that existing.
The being void of gravity is a lot different than underwater gravity, though. So I don't know if that's like an apt comparison, because you're being crushed under tons of pressure at the bottom of the sea compared to the infinite expanse of space.
All I know is her hair needed to do this.
I mean, all I know
had a lot of motion.
Darling, it's better down where it's wetter. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
Didn't the original actor, like Alec Baldwin, came in and replaced? Was it Chris Miller? Who was the original?
It was Matt Dillon.
Matt Dillon.
Yeah,
he was furious.
Okay, so I can kind of see that though, because I made a note where I was better. Like the character, the actual character looks like a weird, like.
I called him Affleck Baldwin.
Yes, exactly. I was just about to say he looks like Ben Affleck, but now that you said Matt Dillon, right? It looks like a combination of the two.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like
It's
if they
like they-
married and had a child, that's what that it would come out as, like a CGI monster.
Where's that movie?
I'd watch that movie.
Wait, was that Splice?
I think so.
No, I think
yeah.
Probably.
So something we should probably move on to the next segment. I know there's just so much. There's just so much.
Okay.
Just so much.
Okay, I'm
But
just gonna
something
burn...
I wanted to ask.
Okay.
So something that I found annoying is that based on how this was edited and written, it doesn't seem like any of the subplots had any effect on anything. Even the one about the giant gun shooting the earth didn't seem to matter. It
He
seemed
kills
like
himself. Yeah, like that problem
he did
solved
it,
itself.
and then he's like, no, and then it just blew up, and nothing changed, and it didn't.
If I'm in a
matter.
space station and it's telling me don't do that, I would listen to that voice. But that's
Like,
just
not
me.
even the end
But
of
the-
Raiders of the Lost Ark. They didn't really get that much of a warning.
Yeah, but then I was also confused too because it was, it was played up to be like this giant, like, this is the final solution essentially to this Phantom issue. Like, it's supposed to be like this giant laser cannon, and then fucking Alec Baldwin and I forget that actress's name. Is
Ming
it-
Na Wen?
Thank you. I was and
Yeah. Mulan, right? She played Mulan.
Yeah,
Among
okay.
other things.
Among
She was-
other
I was just trying to
things.
think because I know she's done voice acting, and I was like, okay, I know
Yeah.
that. Okay, yeah.
But Alec and Ming are just fucking okay at the bottom of this pit where the space laser is shooting into.
Yeah, they would have had some.
Like I
residual
do
damage
want
for
to
sure.
throw away. It would have been nice to have a throwaway line of them just like, oh, I guess it wasn't a big deal. I guess it's fine.
Maybe my
I
brain
guess we
defended
worried
it
about nothing.
when I was watching it. Like, okay, maybe it's just a really precise laser, and there's no shockwave or anything. But wow.
And then the second time they shoot it, there's a shockwave.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
like
good
this
point.
energy
Yeah.
shockwave that I guess only affects but it's still, if it only affects like the
Alien
material that the
Yeah.
phantoms are made out of, it should affect you because phantoms are ghosts and it like they eat your ghost. And it's like, I don't know, man. Also, the music
Yeah.
in this movie was a little confusing to me.
Yeah.
The music
Yeah,
is really disappointing because they've had an incredible composer for almost 10 entries of games, and they didn't use him for the movie.
Yeah, Square Enix is a fantastic music.
Yeah, and it's weird
this
that
movie
this
was not
to be
it.
kind of
So anybody have any final thoughts before we go into the next segment
Okay.
here?
I have two. I'm just going to go to the animation and the CGI. One of the things I noticed that was glaring to me, and I think that this is kind of like a first world problem in the sense of like I wouldn't have noticed this 20 years ago, but it's something that in the day of today is something I notice is that like the flatness and weirdness of the shadows and stuff, there isn't any like subsurface scattering or anything. It's just like they're plastic and it's like this really flat light, and like that shot of Aki, and she wakes up and she opens her eyes and the camera's above her and you can look into her tear duct and it's fully illuminated because you can look into her tear duct and it's very weird. It's very weird, and there's like no dynamic shadows at all. It's just like they forgot to render that one shot. But like, and then as I was paying attention, like some things get dynamic shadows and some things don't, and I can't tell where that line was and where they decided because it was a conscious effort of what got done in that specific way.
Yeah,
And that
skin
was
didn't have
very-
translucency. It didn't. It had texture, but it didn't bring in the fact that it would be absorbing light. You know what I mean? Like that. It was all kind of done in like as fake makeup, I guess. You know, and that stands out. I will say, I thought Sid was overall very impressive. The characters that jumped out at me were Keith David's character and Sid. Felt very good efforts at this type of. At the time, I could see that being really like, oh my god, this is a new way of animation. This is amazing. Yeah, I don't know. I guess for ratings, do we give it crystals or?
I think we have to go with
How many spirits within?
Yeah.
How many?
Okay.
Crystals.
Oh yeah,
What the
duh, let's
fuck
do
are you
that.
talking about?
I don't know.
I will
I bring
say
a lot
though,
of baggage to
before
this, 'cause
before
I'm-
we go into rating, can we talk about the timeline? Because this movie takes place in 2065, which
Yeah, that's
is
pretty
in
trippy,
our future. We
Yeah.
will be
Yeah.
alive for that.
Because you're Sid's age.
I'm Sid's age. Yeah, everybody, if you do the math, in the movie, Sid said 43 years ago, he was Aki's age and learning about this. Sid is actually like is approximately my age, either younger than me, a little bit older, or exactly 26. Oh my God. So it's weird to think about. It's always weird with future movies that like have a set date in the future that people will be alive for.
I like that, like a lot of the hologram and like, you know, like the wrist computer.
I have to wait until 2065 to get that. The fuck?
But we have versions of that now. Man, it's the thing that like in 2001 I was like just sci-fi, but now it's very feasible. I'm like, oh yeah, we do have the early stages of that type of technology right now. So
on a related note of technology from sci-fi movies from that day and era, I have wanted the gesture-based computers for Minority Report forever. And like, it's like whatever deity is out there is like, oh, you want a police state like Minority Report? And like, no, the computer.
no.
Yeah, they misinterpreted. There was some miscommunication. What you said was translated from Japanese back to English, back to Japanese, back to English, and it was just lost along the way.
Okay. The other thing, other note, I have a bunch of notes, and I know I'm not going to get to all of them, but one of the ones I want to mention that I thought was really weird is that like they get into they're entering the not the space station, but like the Crisis 3 domed version of New York, and they get into it and they got to get scanned, and Affleck Baldwin has a spirit, and she's doing the surgery with lasers to get the spirit out, and then she saves him, and she's all cocky and stuff, and I wrote this line down. She goes, "Don't worry. You'll be back to normal in no time." And then she walks out, and one of the crewmates is like, "Thank you." And it's like, he was in danger because of her. Like, you're going to be cocky for saving him from a thing that you caused. Like, it's like, what? And like, you are admitting that one is, whoopsie.
We lost him.
Okay. So like,
get it.
So
one, you were admitting that this is the James Woods. Anyway, you are admitting that this is a bad thing, and it's an uncomfortable thing, and it will continue to be an bad thing that you caused. And you're just kind of like, yeah, you're welcome. It's like, no, you did this. You did this. And then like the next scene or whatever that they all kind of are all in is when they stop the elevator. And
that was really gross.
Yeah. And it's like, why are we doing this? He's like, you see the way the captain looks at her. And it's like in the one scene when he was furious at her, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
In the past, Dane, in the past.
Ridiculous. The guy who's like not Barrett, I thought that was ridiculous that they were like, hey, we got to drive right through it. Yeah, let's do it. And they basically get him killed for no reason.
Yeah, they didn't even try. They lost him. Like
there is no part of this movie that makes sense and that's in any way seems to affect any other part of this movie.
We can't make it make sense no matter how much we talk about it. I
think we could go another 2 hours on this, but if you're going to get spirits.
How many spirits within?
This is the problem. We have too many people who like Final Fantasy on this. Like, you are all so animated about it. I enjoy it. Okay, we will get to a rating. The only thing I wanted to say is when Dane was yelling at Aki about being cocky about a problem she solved, did anybody else just
cocky? What?
Did anybody else feel that he was really talking to his father? Because I did.
Oh my god. Oh.
That only reminds me of when I was trying to make that social media post earlier, and Instagram asked if I wanted to add the location "Yes, Daddy."
There's a lot going on there.
Instagram has been ruined, I think.
I think so.
Okay, so ratings. How many spirits within? I mean, we have to go. Usually it's out of 10, but there's only 8 spirits. So
yeah, let's go out of 8.
Oh no, I have to do some fractions now because I wrote down stuff out of 10.
Okay. I'll go first because I think I got.
It's fine.
My problem is I can't separate the technology that I think was incredible from this movie, and the attempt to make something that didn't really get realized on screen. Hironobu was a really passionate storyteller, and I think I think it was really painful for him that this didn't really take off. Or I don't know. I wish they would have given a chance to told a Final Fantasy 2 and a 3 and whatnot. But inherently, it doesn't age well. The technology is very stunted and Frankenstein together cobbled bits of animation that don't do a good job at conveying what the story is supposed to be. And I think there are story elements that were really important that because they were excised so late into production, and then they hoped that badly translated script changes. When the guy brought in to doctor your script says, I need 1 year to fix this, and they say, okay, we'll give you 3 weeks, you're right away going to have problems, So I give it 5 out of 8 spirits. Just, I'm feeling very generous just because I think the concept itself was sound. It was just executed poorly, but I think it's an important movie and a milestone of CG animation. Everyone should see it and go, what the hell did I just watch? So maybe
they're going to feel the
that's
same way
too far.
about Avatar. I think people already do. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Let's go, Erin. How do you feel about this?
So I originally, when I had mine out of 10, I gave it like a 5/4.5 out of 10. So if we're doing out of 8, I'll do like 4 out of 8, because I feel like, for the time it was and I was ready to rate it higher too for animation and stuff like that, just based on the technology aspect. But then I went through and I saw like what other films came out that were animated that year, and like Shrek was one of them. Osmosis Jones was one of them. As far as like CGI goes, like that was a crazy, like we were like early 2000s was like where it was just starting off. So it was like just
Osmosis Jones is really underrated. I like that.
It really, right? I loved it. It played all the time.
Farley Brothers, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But then also too, like Cats and Dogs and what other stuff was like animated, like CGI animated. Oh, the first Harry Potter film was that year too, and I thought I remembered there being a little bit of CGI in that during the Quidditch match.
Was that the one with the ogre in the basement?
There was
not
like
a
something.
great example.
Face on the back.
No. But anyway, I'm giving it like middle of the road, because like I will accept that for the time it was something really great, and I had a little bit of nostalgia about it. But like watching it again, there are flaws, and like if they had just given themselves more time instead of pushing it through and trying to rely on this again and recreate that Final Fantasy for them, but with film, if they would have just given it the time, I think it really could have been something, and really just given that script editor a year.
Yeah. And then have like the Japanese rewrite and then back into English to maybe keep the changes that writer had, instead of being like, they needed someone to localize instead of like translate.
Localize, exactly, because there's so much, like you cannot, with Japanese, you cannot just translate directly, because the syntax is different for both languages. There are some phrases in Japanese that it had one word that translate into a full statement in English, and like sometimes with Japanese too, like they don't have a word, so they borrow words, and they're like they have 3 different alphabets to work with, and like it's impossible. Like you have to take the time for it.
Yeah, if you don't, you get James Woods as your villain doing this.
Yeah, and then you get fucking James Woods. 4 out of 8. 4 out of 8 for me.
Just following up on that, just fun fact, this is not a fun fact, this is dark. I remember reading that after the first A-bomb was dropped on Japan, they were communicating, the United States military was communicating with the Emperor. I think that's correct. And they're like, it's like, we can do this again. And the Japanese emperor said something like, all right, I'm considering surrendering. And like the word for considering had like 6 different meanings. And the translator was like, he's considering it, but he said it sarcastically. And maybe he didn't. It was just a translation thing, because that word meant a few things. I don't know the legitimacy of that. So.
And that was after the first one?
Yeah.
So that is dark. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super dark. Dane, what do you give well, I guess obviously since you brought it up, what is your rating for World War II? And then what's your rating for this movie?
I
2 out
think
of 10 don't recommend.
I would say of the world wars, it is the better one because it is there is a
more cinematic.
Okay, yeah, but I was gonna say it's like World War One is a lot of border disputes and a lot of like generational infighting between European countries and there's a lot of grays and there really isn't a good side. And World War II, you clearly have, and while there is bad things happening everywhere from every side, there is clearly a worse side.
Yeah.
So, and for that, I'm going to say World War II is the better of the two wars. But second follow up, I'm going to agree with everything Erin said, everything Ron said, both of those things, just second. And I'm going to also go with the same rating that Ron gave it, which I believe was a 6 out of 8. It was a technological breakthrough. It's you have this weird like LA noir change in like how the face and bodies don't line up because they're animated, and it's just there's a weird stiltedness, but it's like Evil Dead 2 in the sense of like if you view it as standalone, you're like what, but if you view it where it came from and where it's going, you're like this makes sense.
Okay, so I'll wrap up. You've all made fantastic points. I'll
Final
just say, so I don't give a shit about technology at all. So that doesn't do it for me. I mean, I guess I appreciate the daring and the inventiveness more than I care about the actual technology itself. But so I appreciate them trying something. But my main thing is maybe they did explain it and I just missed it, but nobody was telling me why it mattered that they had these spirits. Like, what does that do? Why is that part of it? I never got it. I didn't understand it.
I think the point of the spirits was to specifically cure Aki, but then it was also a happy coincidence that the Phantoms wanted to combine with Gaia.
So, but
at least that's how the movie portrayed it.
Why does that do that? And why, like...
Because Gaia is the spirit of the earth, and they're spirits from outer space, and like the spirits only affect the spirit of the human.
If you have to use the word to describe the word, you're not actually describing it. You're not defining it. I'm sorry. You know, it's spirit because they're spirits, Nick.
Because because the Phantoms wanted to be within to become the spirits that are within all of us.
Okay, but again, like they're assembling a puzzle. Let's put it this way. Like when someone's like, "Hey, we need to complete this molecule." Okay, and you're in a movie and we're like, oh yeah, then you can see it snapping together and it's just like, okay, and then we make the molecule and now we have the chemical and now we can kill the dinosaurs or whatever. It's like, okay, great, but it's like we're gonna assemble all the spirits. What do you mean? Why are there only 8 of them? What do you mean we gotta assemble the spirits? No, we gotta assemble them. Okay, and then that's gonna get rid of them. Get rid of what? The Phantoms, who are also spirits. And just like all of us are. It just doesn't. I don't get it. I know you all apparently understand. I don't understand.
I just knew the writing was on the wall.
3 out of 8. That's it.
There. That's what I thought you were going to give it. I was just going to agree that the writing was on the wall when I saw this with an inexplicably packed movie theater when it came out. And
yeah, this was big news. This was like...
Yeah, it was huge.
People were like, oh, yeah, this is like... Because they were going to like... We're going to make so many Final Fantasy movies. This is going to be like a continuing thing.
Well,
and then they're like,
that's the thing too, is that it was marketed as Final Fantasy because, and people were thinking, oh, there's going to be big swords. There's going to be gunfights. They're going to literally fight God. And then there was none of that.
No.
Yeah, it's kind of.
But when Sid says it's so warm and the entire theater busted into laughing through the credits, I knew this movie wasn't working.
Yeah, also too, I was really confused by that part. Did everybody's spirit just leave their body, or was that just like something that floated through him?
Erin, it was the spirits were being the spirits. I don't know what.
But the spirits weren't within anymore. I was confused as to why they were out.
Yeah,
why were they out?
It's the.
But also that ending song was fucking awful. Both of them.
That was really bad.
They're so bad.
So was the happy ending that all the ghosts were destroyed? Was that what happened?
They were finally released, or like went back to the earth.
Okay. I don't know. It seems like a mixed message.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We're gonna stop now. This is now the length of a normal podcast, and we're on the first segment, people. All right, everyone. So we are now going to go into our next segment, where we talk about the game, and where basically Nick doesn't talk for the next 30 minutes, and we're going to go into the arcade. So you all have a relationship to the games Final Fantasy. What do you want to say about them? Hopefully in less than 2 minutes. No,
well, to say, to abbreviate, I mean, my God, there's such a history. This goes back to the Nintendo. Americans were all very confused because we got 3 games. No, we got 3 games and a 7th one, and the whole legacy of games that never came out here because at the time American kids are just considered not good enough. That's why we never got Mario 2. These games are considered too hard. But it's a great, rich. It's a very awesome role-playing game series. I think if I were to at gunpoint pick a favorite, I think 2 is my favorite because it was my first game that I played. I love the story. I love that you go to the moon, you fight God, which is a theme throughout a lot of them. The party was diverse. You had a bard, you had a ninja. Final Fantasy 3 was incredible. But I think this movie kind of continues this ongoing 7, 8, and 9. Well, no, more 7 and 8 kind of go more into the aesthetic that this movie kind of borrows from, while also being its own thing. So I don't know. I like the games a whole bunch. I try to keep up with them. I have all of them but 11, I think. I don't know. It's so hard to keep track of them. But I haven't played 15, but I own 2 copies of it. It looks neat. I love the remake of 7, but I'm going to save that for part 2 of this when we talk about having children.
Is 11 the one that was on PS2 and 360 and was the online one before 14?
Yeah, that's their MMO. Yeah, and 14 is as well.
Yeah, I that might be a difficult one to track down. I don't know.
Yeah. That's all I got. I don't know. If I were to really get into it, this would be 2 more hours. But the games are great. They're fun.
We have all the time in the world. You can talk about whatever you want.
I will. I guess piggyback off of Ron. I will say that my personal favorite, similar to Ron in the sense of, because it's the first one I played, is I'm going to go with 3/6. It is still one of my favorite games of all time. I think no, I can save that for the next one. But they're fun. I feel like I think the last one I actually played was 10. I never beat it, but I did play through. I think 4 onward. Not when it came out, but when it was localized and westernized or whatever. But I played the 4, 5, 6, 7. I briefly played 8 and briefly played 9, but really enjoyed it, and some at 10. And I think I just haven't played any of them since. But really loved 6, and will defend 6 religiously to the way that people do with any of the other ones.
Yeah,
the way people feel about 7 is the way I feel about 6.
I wish 5 had gotten localized, because that was the genesis of what became Tactics' whole core. Like their job system came in 5, and 5 is great. Like every class your character could be. You could become a level 99 white mage, level 99 black mage, and red mage. Like you could level up all these things and have different jobs in the game. And man, that was fun.
So so it seems like you keep talking about like red mage, black mage, white mage. The only actual relationship I have with that is there used to be a webcomic called 8-Bit Theater. It's a sprite-based webcomic, and they
I
would
remember
use
that.
those sprites. That's all. That's the only awareness I have of any of this.
So with Final Fantasy, because it was a turn-based battle system, it took heavily from like tabletop RPGs. So like with Dungeons and Dragons, you know, you have like your white mage in Final Fantasy would be a cleric in at least like D&D 5e terms. So it was similar to that, where they would have different jobs that they would do. It would be essentially the character class, and then that would determine what abilities they could use, what armor they can use, what weapons they can use. And there were like some characters that were like more inclined towards specific classes, but for the most part, like you could have an entire team full of rogues if you wanted. But that's kind of how the job system was set up. And that kind of like once you got like more characterization and more like dynamic characters, I feel like in the later games the job system was a lost a little bit. There was still somewhat of that. So like with 7, you know, you have a gunslinger with Barrett, you have a swordsman with Cloud, you have a fighter with Tifa. You kind of have a rogue a little bit, I guess, with Yuffie, because Yuffie's a ninja. But like, or like Barrett, I guess, would be like the tank, or like the paladin, because he's all for good. And
the class system gets really augmented with that one, because it has my favorite element of all the games is the materia system. So you could have your tank character be your healer, because he's got all this materia, which was an item that would let you level up magic or augment it. You know, so if you took your lightning material and put it on your armor, you would be defensive against lightning attacks and whatnot. And that was crack to 15-year-old Ron.
And then that's how you would get moves like fire, or like Fyra, and then Faraga, or like, and then Faragara, or whatever. Like, however you say them. There's a lot of us and juz and r's.
I love that way of doing it, because it's just a lot more romantic than Fire 3. But that was great. But no, Dane, I don't know if you're familiar with this. If anyone remembers this correctly, but I think Final Fantasy comes from, that was the last game they were given as a studio, right? They were going to shut down.
It was literally their Final Fantasy to make.
Yeah, let's make a final game. It's our Final Fantasy, because they're going to turn off the lights next month. And
they were going under.
And it was a great hit, and they made not 15 other games. It was more like 20 other games, because like there are games that have 3 parts, and then
the 3-part sequel stuff lost me, because I played 13 and I kind of liked it, but then they had like 2 sequels. There was like 13 part 2, and it was a lot of weird stuff like that going on in the later games.
15 started as a spin-off of 13, and I don't know if there's any continuity between them still, but I think that if there is, it's the only numbered entries that are in continuity with each other.
And then like to bring this back around, because we're talking about we're talking about movie adaptations of video games, I guess you could call Spirits Within kind of an adaptation that would fit within, but it's because within like the series, especially, like there's this thing about like spirit, and like the connection to Earth is kind of a theme that runs through.
Yeah, the Gaia things, the themes were like 7 of them. So that's
and then also you have Sid, and Sid is this reoccurring character in multiple
Final
games.
Fantasy has Sid with an airship, and
who's usually like a mechanic of some kind, or like, but in this case he's a doctor.
That was a good touch.
Body mechanic.
Does he look the same, or is it just the same?
Always different.
It's always different, but it usually is like, at least from how, like what I've seen of Sid, usually it's some blonde, like 30-year-old to older dude who knows how to do the job well, and is like always in tune with everything, and like knows what's going on.
It makes me laugh,
and then we'll fly a ship to get you somewhere.
Sid always makes me think of him from 2, and in 2 he looks like Gimli from Lord of the Rings, this big fat bearded dwarf who makes airships. So every time I'm like, oh, you're not Sid, because my Sid is a dwarf.
So I'm wondering then, like, because like the most thing I had, like, when did Final Fantasy VII come out? Like 98,
97.
97?
Mm-hmm.
So like that's like, I think that's kind of core middle school time for me, or beginning of middle school, and where like people had games and were talking about them. So that's the one that I heard the most about from my friends who could afford PlayStations. And so I'm wondering, like, it always felt like this kind of more emotional experience, like the way they described interacting with the characters and like the plot line and stuff. So I'm wondering, like, is it, for people who've played this game and seems like it went from a very like mechanic min-maxing kind of, like, or at least feels like kind of avenue where you're
I don't
trying to
know
like
if I'm
get your characters out to a more emotional experience. And these are just guesses I'm making. So, and then kind of feeling that maybe then you could make a movie based around the themes without the interactive elements, without the magic elements, without like anything. I'm wondering, like, was that a flaw that they of why maybe the
omitting
translation to
that
this
stuff for
didn't
the
work?
movie.
Yeah, like, would this movie
I
have
don't
been
know.
one? Would it have been better with magic? I always think yes.
I would have loved to have seen it be medieval fighting dragons, but that goes back to the inherent. My experience with Final Fantasy was a fantasy game, but if someone's first Final Fantasy was 7, then theirs would be more of a cyberpunk kind of neo noir, whatever pigeonhole you like to stick that game in. It's interesting being because I was born in '82, and my cultural viewing of video games is like a BC and AD with Final Fantasy VII, because when I was really into Final Fantasy II, it wasn't cool to talk about video games at school. That was nerd shit. 7, I would talk about it with the guys who played football. Like, that was a mainstream audience game. Everyone I knew played Final Fantasy VII when that came out. And so it was really interesting. Going forward, video games were forever changed, and they're like they are now, from my point of view, because before 7, it just wasn't cool to talk about. My video game shirts and stuff were met with much derision at school until after Final Fantasy VII, and it was a cool thing to talk about those games. And PlayStation onward, it was just mainstream acceptance.
I wonder if that's just a PlayStation thing then, because I feel like
PlayStation
1 era.
Final Fantasy was the first time I was like, oh my god, like my core of friends, like, as every walk of life, likes Final Fantasy VII, like, and then Tomb Raider. So sure, it probably is
maybe you just weren't as cool as you thought you were, Ron.
Oh, I was not cool. but that's why it stands out to me. It's like I can I'm stuck on Ruby Weapon. Let me go to school. I skipped school a lot. This was 10th grade for me. I was never there. I would only go to school because I knew, Ted played Final Fantasy VII. He maybe has beaten Ruby Weapon. Let me go talk to him about that. And then I'd go back home and play Final Fantasy VII. So stay in school, kids. That's my advice. But yeah, so I just thought there was this major mainstream acceptance of that going forward. But I don't know. I personally would have liked to have seen a CG Lord of the Rings that was very Final Fantasy influenced. And, I will get into it with the next one, but I think a Final Fantasy movie is more in line with Advent Children and what that ends up being. So
if Spirits Within had like magic, though, not necessarily that like if it had a device where it was the rediscovery of magic and then that played into the spirit aspect, because I feel like when you start talking about ancient deities, especially with scientists, then it's like a rediscovery of like magic and like what once was, because you could ask certain people, and like science back then was considered to be magic. So I wonder if that was like a subplot that was discovered where it was the rediscovery of magic, would that have made it feel more Final Fantasy than just going full sci-fi?
I like that. Yeah, that would have been neat.
To me, based on what I'm hearing you say, I think I keep coming back to the core flaw, but it seems like there are multiple flaws in this particular core. But there is no
Crisis core, sure.
There is no differentiation, or at least a strong enough differentiation between the main characters. So it's, there's these 2 scientists and then these 4 to 6, I don't even remember how many.
Deep eyes. That's what they were called.
And they're kind of interchangeable. So you don't get a sense of like, you don't have the mechanic, the healer, the tank,
which in Final Fantasy games, there's still like, you still start off with one person, which I guess Aki is our one person, and then they develop a team, but then the team fucking starts dying off.
And this is another core flaw.
Oh, Phoenix Downs.
Our introduction to the world knows more about it than us and refuses to tell us anything.
Yeah.
Like, is actively hostile to explaining herself.
Right away, it's a downhill battle because when she opens her eye,
uphill battle, Ron. Downhill battles are easy.
No, this is the story goes downhill.
Sorry. Yeah,
when she's floating away from her chair and she's giving exposition dumps.
Yeah,
it's been 43 years since the blah blah blah. Like, once you have to do that in the movie, the show don't tell. Like, they didn't need like right away. That's them trying to fix this sinking ship with band-aids, and I don't know. I would have liked a Final Fantasy movie with swords.
Yeah, right.
I think we all would have.
Yeah.
Dane, anything you want to say?
There's a scene where like Alec Baldwin's character is like in like a radio tower, and he like shoots the window, and he runs and he jumps through the window, and he like goes down like 2 or 3 stories and rolls and stuff, and it's like, that's not how that would happen. Like, it's just like anyone that watched it just like, oh, Gray just killed himself for some reason.
That was the most fantasy part, was the physics around that.
I think it's funny because my guess is when we talk about Advent Children, you're going to have no problem with the people boosting Cloud up to fight Sephiroth, like through the air, like physically, like that doesn't work. You can't jump in the air and then push somebody up higher.
Yeah, no, but I wrote that down too, Nick.
Okay, well then.
No one.
But for the record, I didn't complain about this part, despite it being ridiculous, because I also enjoyed that part in Advent Children.
Okay.
Does it make sense? No, but
I mean, you can kind of, even if let's assume that wasn't a sticking point, it makes sense that it wouldn't be, because in Advent Children, that's the way that world works. Here, it doesn't make any sense. You've tried to make it this gritty environment, but apparently you can still survive a 3-story fall, as you're saying, or be James Woods. Disgusting.
I will say, in a positive light, the introduction of the Dead Eyes, was that the team name? Dead Eyes?
Yeah. No, deep eyes.
Deep eyes.
Like deep throat.
So
deep eyes.
Slightly worse.
Slightly worse.
Totally worse. It made me super uncomfortable.
They jump out of like the helicopter, and they have like those guns that shoot like a green compressed air that cushions their fall. That's rad as hell. I'm just gonna say that was really cool.
That
is cool. Try to save the car with that later.
Yeah, it's weird how cool that is and how lame it is when the car does it.
None of the vehicles had seatbelts.
No,
they had force fields, Dane. It's the same thing.
Okay. No, how do you think? What is his name?
Gray.
Shit, did not write down his name.
I called
Ryan.
Him
how did you think Ryan got crushed because he wasn't properly?
There we go.
I thought he was impaled.
Oh yeah, he was impaled. You're right. That wouldn't have helped. Seatbelts wouldn't have helped with that one.
The rebar bounced off of that
Velcro belt. Okay. So that's going to wrap up this particular segment. We're going to go into our third one now.
An hour and an hour and some change in.
Where we've talked about this a little bit, but we're gonna try and codify it into one segment. We're gonna go into the room for improvement.
Room for improvement.
Yeah. This is the theme song that doesn't exist. So in this section, we kind of want to talk about the movie and what could have happened to make it better, if anything.
I feel like we really, what added to our time was talking about what could have made it better.
Yeah, we did
Especially
touch on
in
that
the
a little
first
bit.
segment, like giving the script doctor that full fucking year that he asked for. That would have done something, right?
A stronger script without translation issues. If you're going to go the storyline about her being pregnant, reinforce that. And I don't know.
Use that storyline. That makes sense.
Use that storyline. Make it make sense.
That's a literal spirit within. Like, otherwise, it's just kind of a metaphor for
if it was
being
made
okay
like
with
Avatar
stuff,
today, it would look really cool. Like they've got the nuance down now. The technology is really cool. I've always been a fan of like the idea of some 60-year-old actor who could like look like he did in his prime, acting. I know that there's a lot of problematic issues with that.
I think
that's the
have
one
you not
benefit.
seen The Irishman? That's perfect.
Or Tron Legacy.
Okay,
they already nailed it, Ron. What are you talking about?
Been there, done that.
That's the thing. They've never. God, the Tron Legacy is bad. I mean, I like the movie. I do really enjoy Tron Legacy, but that attempt at the paint thing with his face, no bueno.
Can someone explain to me? This is very brief. Why do they keep making movies that nobody wants, that no one is asking for, that no one cares about? But the only advantage it has is that someone has heard of the first one?
Because they're expecting money.
Oh,
they expect nostalgia will pull through. It's the Ready Player One effect, is what I like to call that. Where it's like,
is really fun, but the
you saw they
of
said the name
cannibals.
Like.
Well, I guess that makes sense then. Yeah, I guess you're right. Like, because I reread Ready Player One, and if you know that those things are in the book,
why would you do that?
Because I read it without like any context, and I was just like, yeah, things I know. And then everybody was just like, yeah, but did you notice how sexist and stupid it is? And it's like, I didn't. And then I reread it and I was like, oh, now I do. Yep, you're right.
It's the same thing, and no shade to anybody who really is into superhero movies, but it's the reason they keep making superhero movies is because people will go to the theater because they want to turn their brains off and watch Iron Man do the cool thing.
Yeah. Plus, that's
where I think WandaVision's so strong. I would like to see us get away from that formula because WandaVision's a really interesting, unique take on the superhero genre.
I should send you guys this video essay that I watched recently that talked a lot about Wanda, but it's mostly about like Wanda's kid and then like another. It was really cool. I'll try to find it.
I think with Spirits Within, I want to go back to the drawing board with Final Fantasy, and it should never have been a movie. I think Final Fantasy, because the strongest episode of the Animatrix was by this team.
Yeah, that's the only thing they did after this, before shutting down completely.
You do an anthology film. You do 10 directors, and their only caveat is to work in the world of Final Fantasy and whatever the hell Final Fantasy means to them. And then you have a heavy metal movie that's just 10 different stories and each one. So yeah, Spirits Within is kind of weird, doesn't make sense, but hey, it was only 8 minutes long. On to the next one. And you can tell these little short vignettes.
Kind of like do you like a Netflix like mini series a la like, is it Love, Sex and Robots?
Same thing, yeah.
Same thing. And you just call it Final. I don't remember what it's called, but just like a Final Fantasy anthology, like you said.
Yeah.
That would just get something because then you can mix and match styles too. Where you can get the CGI and then
I think you're good.
Yeah.
Love, Death and Robots.
Love, Death and Robots. There was a lot of boobs and butt, so that's why I put
sex was part of it at one point, but I think Netflix was like, let's drop the. I can't remember, but yeah, I know at one point sex was part of the title as well.
What is sex but an acknowledgement and a negation of death, Ron?
That's true. Grandma used to say that.
Yeah. What were you doing?
Playing
a robot.
Doing the robot part.
Ron,
keep playing Final Fantasy VII. We're all gonna die one day. Bye.
Okay. My mom, when I was like 9 or 10, I think I asked what came after. She said, "Oh, nothing, just darkness. You go on the ground." and probably
real chipper like that.
At least you have nothing to look forward to.
I was like, I'd like.
Then you're just a good person to be a good person. There's no
Which I
end
think
goal.
is what she was going for, but
Yeah.
I would have gone with a more tact approach, I think. Yeah, Final Fantasy anthology series, 2 or 3 volumes. I'll eat popcorn, call it a day. That's how I'd fix it.
Can I say something that may sound controversial?
Sure.
I don't think they should have had the game creator direct it.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he's too close. You know? Like,
It's
I think
like
they should
Hideo
have had
Kojima
somebody
doing a
else
movie.
adapt it.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
that's
it
when we get
feels
Death
like a
Stranding,
video
though.
game, you know? Like, it feels too much like how you would approach a video game rather than a movie.
Yeah.
What did you say about Death Stranding?
Well, to Ron's point, it's like having Kojima do a movie. Well, he did. It was just Death Stranding. There was also some gameplay elements, but that's essentially. The thing is, though, is that in Kojima's corner, he's got Guillermo del Toro, who is a filmmaker.
Yeah.
So maybe if there was like, fucking hate Steven Spielberg, but if there was a Steven Spielberg with the project too, it might have done something else with it. Like if there was like a big name filmmaker to
Robert
kind of oversee.
No, but I think the Wachowskis, like, this is totally in line with their whole
Dude, that
deal.
would have been so fucking cool.
That's why
because they would have got the message too.
Yeah.
Their version is wonderful. Like their little animatrix story that the studio did. I love it. It's
Flight of the Osiris.
Yeah.
Dane,
really
how do you feel could have improved? What do you think could have improved this particular film?
Easy answer of just don't just translate it. Just have someone also localize it. Like that is to me, I think the easiest fix to all of it. It's just having someone who is more than just changing the words to English.
So that to you is the crash site of a meteor from another planet that is infested with alien ghosts at the heart of the script. That's the big problem. That they translated it back and forth a bunch. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I think
it's like the American they add to Godzilla. Like, hey, what do you got here? A big lizard? And
it's like get out of here, Bryan Cranston.
When you first said that, immediately my mind went to Matthew Broderick, though.
Yeah. I was gonna say
that's where I went.
Yeah.
Especially with them.
Has anybody watched was it Godzilla the 2000? Is it a 2001? When did that one come out? With Matthew Broderick.
I've only seen bits and pieces.
I think it was 2000, yeah, because I think it was around the time of Phantom Menace, and I think there was some marketing.
Still one of the best teaser trailers I think ever released for a movie, because Jurassic Park was still king shit, and it's a bunch of kids in a museum, and it's a T-Rex skeleton, and there's these thumping noises, and the guards looking around, and it gets really dark, and this foot comes crashing down and destroys the T-Rex skeleton. It was like Godzilla next year, and then everything else sucked. It's an interesting movie. Like the practical effects in that alone are really good, but everything about it is so bad, and it's filled with inexplicable amount of Simpsons actors. Like Hank Azaria's in it. There's like 9 of them are in it.
The only thing that I was thinking of with that, it just for some reason popped in my head is, do you remember when they tried to lure Godzilla to the center of the city with a bunch of fish?
Yeah, like a dump truck full of fish.
Yeah, and on the monitor, they've got the city block and then a fish graphic to display where the fish are. It's just a little fish outline.
Didn't get it.
Like, you can't put a red dot there. They're not going to know that that's where the fish are. You got to put a fish graphic.
Did you like the social commentary of Mayor Ebert?
Oh, God.
Like Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel are the mayor.
Wasn't his assistant named Gene or something.
Yeah, they were Gene and Siskel.
Yeah, because they didn't like
Siskel
ID4, and
because
Roland
they
Emmerich
shit on
is that
ID4.
petty.
They were the incompetent head of or in charge of New York's incompetent defense.
Yeah,
terrible.
That was real stupid.
Not good.
Okay, is there anything else we've obviously talked about this movie more than anyone else has ever in the last 20
ever
years
before. Well,
put more effort into it than the translator.
Mm-hmm.
The translator is the lesser known Jason Statham Transporter sequel, where he goes and just does a bad job.
Oh my god, that would be amazing. Right,
I'm
you
gonna
want me
make
to
Neil
translate
money.
this entire movie in 3 weeks? Do I get to kick it? Well, then I can't do it. I'd watch it.
Me too.
you're like,
We'd all
yeah.
watch it. We'd all watch it. I was gonna say that Jason Statham only does movies where he has a job, but I can only think of 2, so I guess that's probably wrong.
The Transporter, The Mechanic.
The bank job.
You're talking about like recasting the film, or
No. Just like where the name of the movie is the job that Jason Statham has, but
okay.
it's not an accurate description. So I wish I hadn't said anything, and now now we keep talking about it, and
Cut it in post. It's fine.
this is the fatal flaw of the podcast, is that we keep talking about things after we should have stopped.
Yeah.
That is.
It's because we're
us.
friends. It's what friends do.
It is what friends do.
Shooting the shit about a terrible fucking movie.
Do you think
Matthew
we'll still
Broderick
do this
signed on for
when
3 Godzillas?
he's still signed up? He's still waiting for that call.
Yep. He contractually has to do it if they ever honored that. Well, I'm sure it expired at some point, but
He hopes it expired.
I would hope it expired. It's like, Matthew, we don't need to put an end date. They're going to do these back to back. It's going to be so big. You don't need to worry about it. You just got your next 4 years, and then it's on to
Every time there's a
Ferris
new
Bueller 2.
Every time there's a new Godzilla trailer, like the director just gets a phone call from Matthew Broderick, be like, "Hey, I thought we were supposed to do the thing. I thought that we had a deal."
all right, this might be not on topic and we'll cut it out. But I just love that the guy who's directing Kong versus Godzilla, his next project is a direct sequel to Face Off 2, but they haven't talked to Travolta or Nicolas Cage yet. So I'm really curious where that's going to go.
That might be interesting with Travolta. I don't know. I feel like Cage might be down for it because he's financially stable again. I don't fucking know about Travolta, though.
Travolta's I'd like to see Nick Cage fight Nick Cage personally.
That would be interesting.
A younger CGI'd version of Nick Cage.
Gemini Man with Nick Cage.
Yeah.
Oh,
what would that?
Lost opportunity.
Thank you for remembering the title of that movie. I was gonna thumper around while I tried to think of it. Okay, everyone. That's gonna end this segment. I think it's been great. I know everyone would agree. And we're gonna end our little segment here. We're gonna stop talking about this movie. We've put the definitive stamp on it. I think anyone else who's referencing this movie will have had to look at this podcast as the definitive work around it. We'll probably be cited in numerous PhD.
The year that the meteor hits, this will be revisited and studied.
Exactly.
They knew
how
so
prescient
much.
it was. They knew so much, and we know so little.
I'll do my best to make the show notes for that when this episode is released in APA format.
That'll be helpful. That'll be helpful so people can cite it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's move on to our fourth and final segment.
Oh God, we still have one more segment.
I know, right? You have such like fear. It sounds like in your voice.
I didn't know.
Oh God, it never ends. It just never ends.
I'm like Matthew Broderick whenever a new Godzilla movie gets out, and I thought I knew what was going on, but I didn't.
We had a deal. You said it was over.
God.
Okay, so this is luckily the shortest segment. We're gonna go into the lobby.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Okay, everyone, we're here. Time code. I will write that down. We made it. So what's everybody been doing?
Been working.
Yeah, working. I've been playing a lot of VR. And like you mentioned at the top, I've had an ear infection, which has been brutal. But I've got my spatial audio back. I don't know if that's a technical term or not medically, but I couldn't hear at all out of the ear, which is really worrisome. I mean, I could, but it always sounded underwater.
Oh.
And now I've got some 3D sound back. But getting in to see my doctor has been a nightmare. So I still haven't seen him. My appointment I tried to make 2 Mondays ago was actually this upcoming Monday, but I moved it to Thursday morning. So I'm going to go then. It doesn't hurt anymore. So I'm like, not as, but I also want to make sure my hearing is good because I use it to pay my bills. So that's important.
I was gonna say, do you have to get like a reference or whatever? I forget, referral to like an ear, nose, and throat specialist, because that might be the next.
Yeah, I don't know. My doc will probably tell me it's either I just need antibiotics or I'll have to go see someone, which has been a nightmare. You know, I had sleep issues when the pandemic started, and it took months to see anybody and finally get a sleep study. And my insurance is supposedly good, but I go to a doctor who refers me to another doctor who refers me to a sleep specialist, and I go see the sleep specialist and I go into the room, and they've never called me back. I never got my results. The only thing is I started sleeping really good, and I kind of just let it go because I haven't had the sleep issues. Now I've got an ear issue, and I'd rather, well, I don't know, this is still not as bad as the sleep issues. But what I laugh at is one of the things I had to do to see the sleep specialist was go 2 miles down to her office, wait to see her, get screened and probed and get into the room. She's not there. They give me her phone number and I FaceTime her from her office. And she goes, yeah, okay, let's get you in for the sleep study. And then I leave. The only thing I've ever gotten in the mail from them was a bill for $93 for that visit. So they charged me $93 to go to her office, which I walked at the time to FaceTime her with a phone number that they could have just texted to me. So
America.
I don't have a lot of faith in the medical system at all. So my whole thing is like, all right, maybe I'll just feel better. And which is not smart, but I'm a very stereotypical male. I had heart attack symptoms last year, and I waited till the arm hurt before I went. Thankfully, it was just a stress thing, but that's how bad I am. Which I can tell you that's been going very well. Once I was on blood pressure medication, I've been doing a lot better.
That's good.
But that's me and my horrible medical advice.
Ron, I'm scared now.
No. So yeah, I just did not take the pandemic very well at all. Like when it started, I was only getting an hour of sleep every night, and sometimes not even that. And the problem was I would go to sleep exhausted, and I would sleep for 20 minutes, and I'd wake up refreshed, like I'd gotten 8 hours of sleep, but I knew that wasn't possible, you know. And that just went on for 8 weeks, you know, something like that.
Ron,
it sucked.
Can I ask this? Is it possible, and tell me if this is crazy, is it possible that instead of sleeping for 20 minutes, you actually slept for 24 hours and 20 minutes? And
I double checked a couple times, but no, like it was literally get my kid down to bed. I'd have a couple of hours of playing video games or something. And typically I try to be asleep by like 11 o'clock, and I'd go to sleep at 11. I wake up at like 11:40, 12:30. And it would be all night just trying to like forcing sleep, but being wide awake. It sucked. But once I was put on blood pressure medication, that all stopped. Like, so I don't know if that's just what it was, but my blood pressure skyrocketed. So I got x-rayed and scanned and all kinds of tests run, and I had really good cholesterol, surprisingly, because I eat like garbage. Overweight, which I'm still working on. And boy, I don't know how we got down this rabbit hole. Here's all the things wrong with it. But no, everything was really good. And the good thing is my arteries and my heart are in great shape. So, but it was scary. You know, I my blood pressure and my anxiety over everything and the lack of sleep really caused a lot of. My doctor was great because he's like, I kept reiterating, I just think this is all in my head. And he's like, well, I don't like that terminology because you're manifesting real symptoms, even though maybe this is in your head as far as it being anxiety, but the anxiety is killing you, you know, and that's So that was cool, and I really liked working with him. So I'm hoping he'll give me some good advice on what's going on with my ear. But
So
yeah, not fun stuff.
That'll end our fifth segment, Ron's med report. And let's go into.
Other than that, I'm good.
No, that heart stuff is scary. I had a stress test last year, mainly because I have anxiety, and my mom had a heart attack when she was 62, something like that, 65. So it's just like, let's just check, let's just make sure. But yeah, that stuff sucks.
Yeah, it's not good.
Dane, what have you been doing?
Yeah.
It's been going on. You still got a ghost behind you, so that's fun.
Yeah, no, that Halloween decoration sticks around.
You
okay,
couldn't, Dane. I'm sorry to interrupt. That was rude of me. But for this podcast, you couldn't have brought the ghost closer to you within the frame.
Fitting, very fitting.
Missed opportunity.
I did look at that throughout most of it, thinking, there's a spirit.
I know it's always like nice to see a smile in the background.
Yeah, no, and there's a reason why I keep that little guy around.
It looks like a self-portrait.
Yep.
I mean, you can see it now, can't you?
Well, I mean, Elena made it, so.
Okay, fine, whatever.
Okay. Let's see.
She was channeling you then.
Yeah. No, it's just, at that point, it's just a portrait.
Dane's spirit within. She was channeling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's the eighth spirit. It's so warm.
Yeah, no, just been working a lot. I've been playing, I am late to the party in this one. I've been playing Rise of the Tomb Raider, which is the second sequel to the second reboot.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you mention that because I have Rise and Shadow, the third one.
Yeah.
I have the whole set and I've never played those two. I can't wait to do that. I just haven't gotten around to it. How is Rise?
Oh, I see my take two. My biggest complaint is I debated on playing the 2013 reboot before playing Rise of the Tomb Raider just to get refreshed and stuff, and then I started playing Rise of the Tomb Raider, and that's my complaint, is that I didn't do that because this shit rocks. Here's the weird thing. Okay, so it was an Xbox One exclusive for like 2 years or something. Like it was a timed exclusive for Xbox One for, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years or whatever before it hit PC and PS4, and I'm playing on a PS4. And so in order to, I don't know, make it easier for other people, more better, to be like, hey, pay $60 for this, that you can get on another system probably for like 30 or something. It is the 20th anniversary edition. So the PS4 only has this 20th anniversary edition because the franchise turns 20 that year that it came out, and it includes all the DLC and all the expansions, and the majority of the expansions and DLC are separate things. They're separate things like, oh, from the menu you now have the option to do this horde mode, or you can go to the Croft Manor or something. I don't know. I haven't touched them, but there is one DLC that is in the game and they don't actually tell you that it's DLC. It's just like, because like there are indigenous people on this mountain in Russia that you can do side quests for, and the majority of them are like, we are building a tower, we need these crafting materials, and so you go out and gather the crafting materials. Or like, we're building a camp but there's a cave full of wolves, can you clear it out? So they're very, very simple side quests. They're not really intense or scripted or anything. They kind of feel like the randomly generated quests from Skyrim, where it's like, go to this location and do this thing, and
fight
that's basically
the orc commander.
Yeah,
to win.
And so, but the DLC, which is on this game in the PS4 version, it starts as a side quest, and you don't know that. And so I start this side quest, and it's like, my grandfather went into this cave can you look for him? And then you go into this cave and there's poison flowers and you start hallucinating and dead bodies are like watching you and following you. And there are like spirits in the trees moving around. And then you go to this clearing and there's this house. It's a house, like a normal, like 2-story house, big house on chicken legs that's running around and shooting fireballs at you. And it's just like, what the hell just happened?
So it's like it's Baba Yaga's hut?
It is. It's Baba Yaga. Yeah, Baba Yaga it's the DLC to this. That makes
sense.
Like
it's like if they're in Russia, then that makes sense.
That is funny though, that's like how you think the game starts. Like from your perspective, that's the first thing that happens. Completely disconnected. Deep. Whoa, this is weird.
And again, it's just like presented as just one of these side quests that can give you a little XP or some crafting bonus or something. And then
here, go trip balls in this cave.
And then there's it becomes like a series of quests to defeat Baba Yaga. And it's just one of those things that was just like, this is not what I thought this was going to be. Anyway, so that's what I've been up to.
Cool. Nice. Erin, what's going on with you?
Nothing much. Been working a whole bunch. Shane and
you
I
work in the world. You have to
I do. I'm out in the world. I'm in retail.
That
actually
crazy.
So because I work in such like a niche store, it's not bad. It's the first work environment that I've been in where I actually enjoy talking to customers. Like, so that part is kind of weird. Like, I deal with people who are super nice. I usually don't I hear the stories of maybe somebody having like a bad time with a customer, but like I personally don't get that. So that's fine with me. But yeah, I work out in the public, and my store kind of has like a no tolerance policy. If somebody doesn't have a mask, like we'll give them one, but if they refuse to wear it, then they're not allowed to shop in the store. We have hand sanitizer everywhere and make sure people use it before they come in through the building, or else they're not allowed in until they use it. People are understanding. So that's fine. There's like some weirdos, but that's just because I sell people crystals and like tarot cards. So it's like, it
comes with the territory sometimes.
It comes with the territory. There's some people where it's like, I'll let you have your time. But yeah, I work with the public and it's actually okay. Shane, my partner, and we've been rewatching through Twin Peaks again because it's just it's a fun thing we like to do sometimes. And so
nice.
We started this round. Both of us had never seen Fire Walk with Me. So we watched Fire Walk with Me first. And I almost wish I hadn't seen it, not because I don't like the movie or anything. And it was very David Lynch, it very Fire Walk with Me, and then the season 3 of Twin Peaks to feel very much from the same beast. But Fire Walk with Me almost ruins Twin Peaks because it's Leland the whole time. Spoiler alert. But also Twin Peaks has been out for decades at this point.
I think it's cool, the latest stuff with Twin Peaks, how I don't know if it's important stuff with Fire Walk with Me that was kind of like, oh, this is weird. I mean, understatement, but
it makes sense in the third season.
It makes sense in that. The third season is really, at the time he was like, oh, this is David Lynch being David Lynch, but either he was being David Lynch and he connected it really well.
Red Letter Media does a really good breakdown of the third season.
Their breakdown was excellent. Yeah, they brought up a lot of good points, like the room above the gas station.
Yeah.
Maybe the problem with David Lynch is that nobody ever gives him enough time. So it's like all David Lynch movies would make sense if they were 8 hours long and spaced out over 40 years. That's the problem.
Yeah.
There's not many creatives, maybe I don't understand. I like his movies. I like his work. I like him as a storyteller. But like Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, are operating on a level that just isn't. That's above my head a lot of the time.
That's why his hair's
You
so
also,
high.
well, also too,
Yeah.
like being above your head, but also you need to be in the headspace to
Exactly,
to take in a David Lynch film.
But I love the man.
Like you need to be in the proper headspace for sure.
There's like those 2 documentaries, I'm sure you've seen them, where it's just like his process and it's like him painting with a cigarette and he's just yelling at but it's just a camera crew following him around painting his house. He's just standing in his backyard and just being David Lynch. And I love that he does weather reports on YouTube. It's just
He's been doing daily weather reports and stuff.
Hello, it's cold outside and there's no sky, but there is, and it's blue. Back to you. That's all he does, and it's
Amazing.
wonderful. What does he call? What does he call? What's his nickname for? Oh God, from Twin Peaks.
Kyle MacLachlan?
Kyle MacLachlan. He calls him something really funny.
Paul Atreides.
No. Yeah.
This is the rest of the podcast, everyone.
Welcome to our
Welcome to
flawless
hour 4
segment into our
Wait,
flawless our almost 2 hour long segue into our Twin Peaks podcast.
Yeah.
This is
I'll hold
This
the
is-
log.
this
Anyway,
is
Fire
Walk
podcast with
us.
me.
Fire walking around.
Yeah.
No, the producer of Dune couldn't pronounce Kyle MacLachlan's name, or he'd call him something really like Coyle, or I can't remember what his nickname, or him trying to say Kyle MacLachlan is what Kyle MacLachlan is referred to by David Lynch.
I like
If
that.
I had known
that's-
this, it'd be a very cute story, and I
Yeah.
just butchered it. But look it up.
Oh,
It's-
Well, I think it was
it's
a very
good.
cute almost story. So it's great.
Endearing.
I for Christmas as like a gag gift, it was an expensive gag gift, but I still think it's funny whenever I talk about it. I bought my partner the 7 movie box set of Tremors, and I keep
Nice.
and I keep telling him, when are we going to make our Tremors podcast? Because I want to. That's the only way that I'm going to watch all 7 Tremors movies with you.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
And so if you guys want to start a Tremors podcast, because I have all 7 of them now, and clearly my partner
I
is
only have the
dragging his
first one,
feet.
but I'd watch the rest.
I've only seen the first
Yeah,
one
I'm on
too.
board.
I've only seen the first one.
I've
I
seen
own
the first
one. I
3.
like the second one. It's cheesy as hell, but I really like it, and I haven't seen the rest. And there's a lot because there's 7.
Because
But-
there's 7. And the 7th one came out last year.
yeah,
It was like
you're right. Is that
2019
Frozen
or
something?
2028. It was like, yes, and it's on Netflix right now. And the only
okay.
consistent character is
What's his name? Married to Reba McEntire.
Yeah. I don't remember his name, but he was like the right wing gun nut
Oh,
in the
no.
first
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, right wing gun nut, and my favorite character. I like, I don't get how it works.
The one time like a doomsday prepper came through.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Wonderful blending of miniature too, because like
Oh
it,
yeah.
it would whip pan to them taking the guns off the wall, whip pan to the miniature, and like
Run. Save this for our Tremors podcast.
yeah, okay.
Iran covers Tremors.
The only thing I know, I've seen the first one, as apparently all of us have. The only thing I know is the 4th one is a prequel that also has that guy in it playing his own ancestor. So
Yeah, in the old
That's
west,
fun.
right?
yeah.
Oh my god.
Okay, everyone.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna wrap up this thing. I can't imagine going longer. All right. So you've
Continued in part 2.
So thanks everyone for listening to this episode of Pixel Theater. It had been going so long I nearly forgot the name. No joke, I wasn't 100% sure what the name of this podcast
This is
was.
the Twin Peaks one, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we're
Turned
doing
into
a
that.
Twin Peaks podcast now? Okay.
Sure. I don't think anyone's ever done that. So
Yeah, I don't think any have you guys seen Twin Peaks?
Has anybody ever talked about it for a long time?
Does anybody else know about
at a
this?
party
It's really
when you're drunk?
this really obscure thing that I found.
I don't know,
think
but this
anybody
is
else
one
has
damn
seen
fine
it.
cup of coffee.
The thing about David Duchovny,
David Duchovny looked good.
no denying that.
So that's going to wrap up this episode of Pixel Theater, everyone. We want to thank you for listening. You can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. Just look around. Just look around you.
We're there.
That's where we are. We're on Instagram.
Like
I know
Gaia,
that.
we are everywhere.
Exactly.
But below the earth.
But
some people don't believe we exist.
But don't destroy us with a Zeus cannon, because apparently it's impossible and won't actually do anything. But again, we want to thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed it as even a tenth as much as we like making it. And if you have anything to say, find us on those platforms. And if not, then we will see you back here next time, where we are going to talk about Final Fantasy VII Advent Children.
Woohoo!
Also, annoyingly, I almost said Advent Calendar.
That would have been just as good.
Okay.
Right.
Oh.
Okay, everyone stop recording.